At that moment, I had this change in feeling between something that was just a very natural thing to do. I'd never thought about it, to something that became an obligation. These people who have those moments of genius, they don't think about it. It happens. It's the flow. It's like, wow, my God, I could actually draw a portrait and it looked good.
Hi, I'm Claire, founder of Open Stage Arts, Drama and Singing classes for adults. Lots of the adults who come to our classes and online events are looking for a creativity that has been put on the back burner during their sensible grown-up years. I have found this to be true among other creatives too, so I've decided to find out more about the painters, photographers, writers, printmakers, actors, crafters, teachers and more who have found or refound their creativity later in life. For this episode, I'm speaking via Zoom to Rob Ballentine, a pet portrait artist. Hi Rob, you have had a very recent return to creativity. What is it you do?
Hi, yeah, I do pet portraits. I draw people's pets for them.
Brilliant. Were you arty as a child, and did you have a positive experience of arts subjects at school?
Yes. Yes and no and no and yes. When I was a kid, I drew quite a lot, I think. I think as many or most children do. So, yeah, I loved it. It was just one of those things I did. But then I kind of remember this to this time when I was drawing something like an aeroplane or something, and I went downstairs outside with my family. My parents were there, my grandparents, and I remember everyone saying, "Wow, amazing, wonderful, brilliant," as you kind of do to a child anyway. And then I think it was my mum. She said, or perhaps it was all of them said, "Wow, that's really good. You should do more." What was odd about it is, at that moment, I had this change in feeling between something that was just a very natural thing to do. I'd never thought about it, to something that became an obligation. And it wasn't that she turned it into it becoming an obligation, but something in me just moved from that can do to should do. And that's when my art sort of changed, or my sort of motivation towards it changed. And then I went through school like most people. I continued drawing, was quite good at it, did art O-level, and then went on to do art A-level. And there were 4 of us who got our A's in our art O-level. Then 3 of us, myself and my two best friends, we went on to do the art A-level. And it sucked. We didn't like it, in a nutshell. So we all left. So all 3 of us just dropped it after about 6 or 8 months. We all left school, left art. We were destined to carry on, all of us, to go to our varying art schools, but no, we all left. And for me, it was because it was boring. It was uninspiring. It didn't have that thing that we had earlier, that you just drew because it was fun to draw. It was exciting. It was creative. It was wonderful. It became that same thing, I think, that my mother said. You should do this. You have to do this. It became an obligation. And when something becomes an obligation, it loses that whole impetus, that whole reason why you do it in the first place. So, yeah, that was that, really. That was the last time I drew.
Oh, so after not doing art A-level, what did you do next?
After not doing art A-level, I left school. I wanted to get into the music industry. I played guitar. I started learning about 14, 15 years old, and then got together with some friends. And I guess like anything at that sort of age, it's kind of cool. And I loved it. We loved playing together as a band. And I probably didn't hold out as much hope as a band as I did for myself, for being able to maybe finding other ways into the music industry, just in case. So I tried to get into becoming a sound recording engineer, but that was a little bit trickier than I thought it would be. And And I think I was a little bit put off back then at the thought, after having read a book on it, on starting off as being a T-boy. I was far too good to be a T-boy. So I ended up going back to school and studying, retaking my O-level physics, actually, and doing that so I could get that to get into somehow into the music industry. But then ended up just going into work, earning money, doing apprenticeships and stuff like that in electronics companies, and then went into sales. And then around the age of 24, 25, I saw this article in a magazine which was to join this place called Musicians Institute in London, and it was to teach you how to be a guitar player, how to get into the music industry, and that advert just jumped at me. So that's what I did. I gave up everything. I gave up a well-paid career and job, and much to the disgust of everyone else, and said, no, that's it. I'm jacking it all in. You might think this is a pattern, really, but it wasn't. I left everything, went to Musicians Institute in London, and was taught by people like Michael Jackson's guitarist, Jennifer Batten, who's awesome, and Jerry Rafferty, who did Song Baker Street. It was his guitarist who came on board. And it was funny, actually. One thing that he said that really did stick to me, and also teachers, which was, there are many musicians out there who are good or are perhaps in the charts. The problem with some of these people is that they don't understand their art. They don't understand why they do what they do, or what causes that particular piece of the song to make it good, to make it excellent. And so if you understand the structure of your art, whatever art that is, and you understand the technicalities of it, that's how you become creative. If you look back at people like Paul McCartney, that guy was a genius. And it wasn't necessarily just because he was good at his instrument. He knew his art. He knew his art amazingly. And most of the other musicians that I followed and looked at back then, they are brilliant, because they studied their techniques, they studied how to write music, they studied how to do that, and that really stuck with me. And it really was about this: know your art to become an artist. And I think that's what didn't happen at school, and that's why I think I was uninspired. I never learned how to draw. They never taught me how to draw. So, when it came to do things like portraits, my portrait of myself, I look like a monster, and it's not really how you want to look. You sort of look in the mirror and go, hey, yeah, that's me, I look kind of cool in sunlight. And when I got to draw myself, it was a self-portrait. It was, that's bad, man, that's just so bad. But my friend, now, he could draw portraits. He had that natural ability, but he didn't know how he did what he did. Which is kind of interesting, because at around that time of being in a music college, or just before that, actually, I came across this stuff called NLP, which is a psychology-based learning. But its main premise is all about how you know what you know. It's about modeling people who are exceptional at a skill and understanding what causes that skill to happen in such a way that if you were to learn their patterns and their structure, you could replicate that skill as if you were them after some years. Or rather, instead of taking 10, 20 years to learn that, you could do it in a much, much, much shorter time. And that really interested me. And it all kind of started to come together and make sense. I then came across a bit of a crossroads, actually. Do I become a rock star? Do I leave music college here and become a rock star? Is that where I'm going to go? Or do I get into this stuff called NLP? I thought the whole premise behind it was just amazing. It was awesome. And it was that actually took me in the end. When I was at music college, I looked at a number of other musicians there and compared myself to them, as one does naturally anyway, between colleagues. And I thought they had a much, much better chance of becoming rock stars and making it in the music industry than I did. I love my music. I love playing guitar. It's so personal to me. But there was something about this NLP stuff that really hit home with me, which was, how do you get to be like as good as somebody else? I think I've always striven. There's a few words in that one. For this sense of how do you get to be the best that you can be, and what is that? What does it look like? What is it? I don't know. I knew that when I do things, I tend to push myself out beyond what I'm capable of doing, just to, I suppose, test myself. So that's what I ended up doing. I then left music college and started to work with other people into business and teach this psychology stuff as an associate trainer and teacher. So I ended up doing that for a few years, and then started up my own business. I then was very fortunate. I met the co-creator of NLP and worked with him on a project in Australia with a professor over there, which is studying autistic savants. And so, people like Rain Man and this other kid, actually a couple of them were artists, the savants that was at the age of 7 or 8 draw phenomenal pictures. And this guy's story, Alan Snyder, was about the fact that the difference between savants and us primarily is that we learn language, and language interrupts this flow from our what he calls the higher brain processing unit. And language does it because we start naming things. We say, this is a table, this is a chair, this is a ceiling, this is a computer, this is my name, this is who I am. And by naming things, you solidify it in time. Whereas what happens it seems with the autistic savants is by not having this ability to have this command of naming things in the way that we do, they have this direct access to our unconscious that allows them to see more and experience more than the thing that we see. So if you imagine that saying, one person's milestone is another person's seat, looking at the same object but experiencing it differently. But the savants seem to experience these things in more ways than what we do, because we partition the way that we experience things through language. So David's stuff was all about, well, how can you and I have access to the same kind of ability that autistic savants have? And mine and John's interest was, well, how can we understand what David's doing but link it back to what we do through NLP, which is, we know that we can model people and we can do this, but is he doing something different? So it's kind of like, how can we kind of pull these two things together? And we met him, and we had this whole long conversation about it. And he got into this because when people have brain operations, they're asked if they can experiment on them during them, because it's the only time they get to have someone in an operation who's conscious, so that they can do an experiment and find out what happens on the brain, because there's no nerve endings, he doesn't feel anything, and try things out and get feedback immediately from it. And what they discovered is that when it's stimulated certain parts of the brain which produces language, that some of these patients were able to count prime numbers. Now, prime numbers is what is considered a genius ability that autistic savants have. So a prime number, after I think about 5 or 6 of them, you're into your millions already. Anyway, so this is what Alan discovered, and he found that by repressing people's ability to speak, that they were able to get access to this higher brain function. And so his study was all about this. So he was able to take normal people, put this headset on them, And they were people who said they couldn't even draw stick figures were then able to draw really quite good pictures, actually, and solve mathematical problems and do listen to pieces of music and replay them back, who'd never played the piano before. So this got really, really interesting. And John and I were like, wow, this is kind of cool. But we do this as well with NLP. So what's the difference? Well, ours was more about, well, I say ours because obviously he's a co-creator. I mean, he did this back in the 1970s, and was more about, well, how can we understand what he's doing? Because, of course, you can't go around with a headset on everywhere just to become an artist. And one of the things that we really agreed on was this whole notion of reducing your ability to produce language, to have this high-performing state. So it's very state-oriented. Now, when you go back to something like being a musician or an artist or a dancer, these people who have those moments of genius, they don't think about it. It happens. It's the flow. And so, yeah, really, really quite very interesting. And that was about the point that I started to run my own business, to teach this whole stuff called NLP to other people so that they could use it in business for their own personal and professional development. I still did it art back then. I still kind of had it as yeah, I'd like to do it someday, but I was into this.
Why and how did you start putting pen to paper again?
Yeah, good question. It was after my daughter was born. I think I wanted to draw her. We had a photo of her, and I thought, that's beautiful. I'd love to be able to draw that. But then I looked at it and went, I can't draw portraits. I'm rubbish at them. She'd look like a monster. So I couldn't do it. And then one day, I came across an article about Leonardo da Vinci. And it showed him, or a picture of him, a drawing of him, using a grid to draw with. And I'm like, what? What's all that about? And the idea behind the grid is you then take a picture, then you draw a grid, and then you can kind of copy that picture using a grid that recreates it from one picture to another. And I thought, well, this actually kind of makes sense. I might actually be able to draw a portrait. So I gave it a go. And yeah, it worked. It's like, wow, my God, I could actually draw a portrait, and it looked good. I was really pleased there, very pleased. Never done hair before, and it was really good. Then I thought, well, look, if it's good enough for Da Vinci, so I drew her, then I did a few more pictures and kept using this grid method and thought, this is good. Now I can actually start to learn how to draw. But of course, as you're doing it, there's always that part of you thinks, isn't this just cheating a bit? Even though, Da Vinci did it, but, it wasn't just him either. Loads of other great artists used it. They used it for taking small drawings and making them much, much bigger, or to make, huge wall drawings. And you can still see some actually at the V&A. So then I had an opportunity. Well, had an opportunity. It sounds really bad, actually. My father passed away, and I think at this point I wanted to do something really serious, as kind of like not a monument, but maybe something like that. But to give it to my mum. So I got the old grid out and put it on a big A3 sheet of paper, and spent 40-odd hours, 50-odd hours drawing him. So I really wanted to make this the best that I possibly could. And it was lovely. It was really, really cathartic, to be able to draw someone that obviously you care about and who passed away. And I think that's the first time I really had this sense of connection at another level that you don't get from just drawing something. That when you really do pay attention to that subject, how much you learn about them at some level. I don't know what that is, but you just have a deeper sense of connection. And it was a beautiful thing to do. And then I thought, then after that, I wanted to do a big piece for myself. So I took a Lord of the Rings picture that I've always wanted, that I've loved from the films, which is the riders, the ring wraiths crossing the ford into Rivendell. And I thought, wow, if I could do that, then I can have this kind of artwork at home, So I set myself the task of doing that, and I started that on an A2 sheet of paper. So a big piece, well, big for me it was anyway, pencil drawing. And I got about 3/4 of the way through the first picture of the horse, and realised that I wasn't good enough to finish it. So I'd reached the level of my own technical capability of what I was able to do. I couldn't get the shades, the shadows, the lightness. That I was trying to do things that wouldn't work. How do you draw white? I didn't understand that because I'd never been taught that at school. So it's like, well, where can I learn? Hey, you know what? We're so lucky nowadays. We have YouTube. It's amazing, really. It is. And so I went off there, and my search took me far and wide to, so many different artists, and it was difficult though, because to find the things that I needed to find, I had to go to so many different places. It wasn't like, well, here's one person teaches you the whole thing. Actually, there were some, but I was always trying to find the bits that I needed. So. That was my journey, really. Learning the tiny bits from people. It was really just small bits. It could just be how to draw a small bit of fur, how to draw a moustache, and how to get that white on there. The different techniques and what kind of technique that I wanted to use that was going to work well. And in the end, some of it even came down to as much as materials. Not having the right materials makes such a huge difference. I was drawing on some things on copy paper. It's rubbish, really. You've got to have good paper, and you've got to have good pencils. So these things do make a difference, and have good rubbers. The moldable rubbers and things like that.
Yeah. Your pet portraits, that has taken off really quickly, hasn't it? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was weird. That really was completely out of the blue, unexpected. So lockdown happened, and a friend of my wife's, his dog had passed away, and it was his best friend. He ran his own business. He would travel around Europe everywhere with his dog. So he was his best buddy. He was hurting big time. And my wife said, "Look, you've drawn our dog. Why don't you draw his? Maybe that'll help him, be something good for him." So I said, yeah, why not? So I did. So I drew his dog. That was a learning challenge as well. Oh my God, I'm drawing fur now. Yeah, I did that, and we sent it off to him, and it helped a lot. And then he posted it up on his social media, and then loads of other people saying, "Oh my God, it's amazing! Wow, can you draw my pet?" And I'm like, "Okay, fine." And then my wife said, "Look, obviously you're getting quite a few people drawing it. It's time. So, you ever thought about charging for it?" So, okay. So people said, "Look, how much would you charge?" So that's what I started with, and started drawing other people's pets. And then as I drew them, I then posted some of them on social media, and then it just took off, crazy. People said, "Love it," and they just kept coming back and saying, "How much? Can you PM me your price, please?" And so today I can put it up somewhere and get 700 odd likes and stuff. It's crazy.
That's brilliant. What techniques and processes work well for you when portraying pets in particular?
I think one of the main things for me is, actually, I can tell you one directly, which happened yesterday. Yesterday was the first time I drew something, or the day before I started it, and I ended up throwing it away. So I've never done that before. So in 8 months, everything had always been, I'd drawn it, worked through a lot of challenges. Don't get me wrong, every pet portrait is a challenge. There's not one that I can do and say, yeah, that was a breeze, that was easy. There's always a challenge in it. But this one was a massive challenge, and I just said, I can't do it. I'm absolutely struggling with this one. I cannot get the light. It's so fine. Because of the style that I draw in a very sort of highly detailed manner. not because I want photorealism, but I just like that kind of detail in a drawing. I kind of wanted to really sort of pull out that character. And the lighting was just all over the place. It was just, I looked and went, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And I struggled. So I didn't do anything. I stopped. I picked up my Xbox, put on a game, and played that all day. And just sat there, just trying to think it through. What do I need to do? How am I going to go about this? And I think that's the first time I probably spent a long time really cogitating on what am I going to do and how am I going to go about this. And one of the things I did was actually choose the right paper. It wasn't that I'd chosen the wrong paper, it's the wrong paper colour. I went for a buff yellow background and it just wasn't working. So I went for a grey, and yeah, I'm so over the moon with it. You know, it's so making just a simple choice like that can make a huge difference. And I think patience is the other one. I can sometimes get a little bit impatient, and it's not that I want to finish it, but it's kind of like I get I just want to do this bit here, and sometimes I need to sit back. And I think as much of doing art is more about managing your own personal and emotional state than it is your technical ability to be able to do something. And you know, if you can't manage your state, then you probably can't manage the drawing. And this is probably the harder thing to manage, to be honest with you. Well, for me it is. I'm not saying it is for everybody else. And so other techniques is really learning about light, really understanding the way that light hits something, and the way that you want to create shadows and dark, and really get that form of something, and the way that you can use colour to sort of build that up. You know, it's so easy to go, oh, it's a black and white dog. You know, oh, it's black fur. But when you really, really pay attention and close to it, it's not. You know, you've got magenta in there, auburn, you've got burgundy, you've got browns in there. And you can pull up so many different colours. And that's what I found with this dog yesterday. There were so many different colours of one range. It was like, how am I going to draw them? Because you're going like, you know, this colour there, and that colour, then this colour, a different one, and another one, and another one, all in like a space of about an inch. And going, oh my God, that's... If I had a month to do it, I could probably do it, but I don't. So there is a time limit in which you have to do something, you know, for what it is that you do.
Well, speaking about that business side of it, well, there's two things really. Are you concerned that having the commissions and being successful as you are with your commissions, that may mean the quality of your work lessens, or that you lose the passion for and the enjoyment of the drawing?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think you have to ask yourself, you know, carefully, what is it that you get out from it, and if it's just the drawing for drawing's sake, and you're doing it just to get paid, then it's a job, you know, and then it's a job like any other job that you go to, and it's all about the pay packet at the end of the day. If it's something more than that, then it's not a job. It's something because you're interested in it, because you have a passion for it, because you're excited by it, because you think about it at night time. You know, when you wake up, you're thinking about, well, how can I do this one? Or, you know, what's different about this? Why do I enjoy doing it? You know, I love... For me, when I did my coaching and training, the most enjoyable aspect of that was helping people change. And it was that moment of when you coach someone who has had this intractable problem where they've suffered in pain for so long, and then you help them, and it's gone. And that change, that moment of being there with someone where that change happens, is something that you can't describe. You have this really deep sense of connection and being with that person. And it's a bit like this as well, is that when you hand this portrait over to someone and you get them to see it, or you get to hear what they say about it, it's a very similar quality that, you know, in some way at work, I help people have happier lives at work. Here I help people have happier lives at home, you know. And it's just a different way of achieving that same kind of outcome. It's, you know, so for me, drawing isn't about drawing. It's, you know, how do I help how do I help people have a better life or enjoy what they have in their life already? And to be fair, at the moment with what's going on, if you can just give a little bit of a smile to someone's face, then that's even the smallest thing that you could do is a good thing.
Yeah. I wanted to go back just briefly. You were talking about the colours and the very many colours that you see in fur, for example. And you started with drawing, but you have introduced colour and you use pastels. How did you get to that decision?
Yeah. I knew I was going to go into colour at some point, but I didn't know when or how. I love black and white. I love graphite. I think they're two different things. What I love about graphite is the moodiness that you get from it. It has a real mood that you can't get with colour. Black and white photographs, I think, when we see them, we all somehow get really connected to it, this sort of deep visceral sense. Whereas colour tends to be, I think, more, we see something, go, oh, that's nice, that's amazing, it's wonderful. But does it really have the same thing that black and white does? So they're two different mediums, and they each have their own place. So colour, I knew that it was something that I was going to do at some point. At school, I used to paint. Never did oils, it was acrylics back then. Never did watercolours, it was just acrylics. So I knew at some point I would do paint, but I didn't want to do that yet. I tried painting a couple of years ago, something for my daughter, and that turned out to be a monster. So
There's a lot of monsters.
Yeah, it was kind of a funny experience, actually, because I was going to draw a paint for her, a picture from How to Train a Dragon. It was a picture of the dragons, and I really had in my head, yeah, I can do this. Not a problem. I used to be quite good at school doing kind of fantasy stuff. Let's whip out the old paintbrush and the acrylic painter, and off we go. And no, it failed. So I lost my confidence as quickly as I did my ego. So pastel pencils became a possible choice between that and coloured pencils as a way to go. I tried colour pencils, and it just didn't work because you can't put light on dark. And I thought you could. I had no experience of it, so I was trying to do light on dark, and it just failed miserably. So that went, and then I saw someone else doing some, and went, oh, you can do that on there with pencils, pastel pencils. Well, that's interesting. Maybe I'll give that a go. So before I did it for anybody else, I chose one of our pets, Ripley, who had passed away a few years ago, but I had this wonderful picture of him as a puppy, and tested it out on him. And wow, I was absolutely gobsmacked with the result. It was amazing. I'm not saying I was amazing. I said it was amazing. It's like, wow, it was so much easier than I thought it would be, and it really came out, wonderfully. So I thought, well, okay, if I can do it for us, let's go on to other people, and I started offering that, and it's been crazy. People love it.
Your full-on creative return has all happened quite quickly. What are your plans for the future now that this is in your life?
Plans for the future. Short term, it's just about building this side of the business up. Helping people out, doing their portraits, doing that. I think it's important to have a stable income. So it's about building that stability, having the marketing out there, so it becomes stable. I can see 3, 4, 5 months in advance, where the income's coming. Obviously, being self-employed, you are your marketing person, you're the accounts, you're the salesperson, you're the website developer and builder, all this kind of stuff. And so that takes up a lot of time. Being an artist isn't about doing art. It's about being a business person as much as it is about that. So it's about having a stable business. Once I have a sense of that, of having 4-6 months, commissions in advance, something like that, then I may look to get into teaching what it is that I've learned. And I think for me, my interest, going back earlier to this whole thing about modelling people who are exceptional at what they do, is when I was realised I needed to upskill myself quickly. When people say, "Can you draw my dog? Can you draw my cat? Can you draw my horse?" Is I'm going, yeah, I can, but hell, how am I going to do that? So I had to learn very, very, very quickly how to be good very quickly, because people were paying me for it. If someone pays you for it, you do the best you can, and so yeah, if I can't do something, I need to go and find out how. And my ability, my skill of having learned modelling allowed me to go and watch other artists and just find out what it is that they're doing at this kind of unconscious level, the way that they're drawing some of the fine moves, because that's how they do what they do. Even though they're saying something differently, I'm watching what they're doing and trying to pick up on what they're doing rather than what it is that they say that they're doing. One of the things that I found out is a perfect little sweet spot for finding out what people do is, if you can't get to speak to them, if you can't hear them, is you look at where they start their drawing off, and where, before they get to all the top layers, all the detail, it's all the underneath layers. That tells you how they make their drawing up. It's much harder to see it once you've got the completed drawing. If you go down a few layers and watch how they start early on, you can start to re-engineer how they're doing some of the stuff, and that's what I was doing. So moving back to your question, is maybe building out some courses or things like that for other people. Say, hey, I'd love to draw. I love to draw pets. I don't think there's anything out there yet that teaches specifically, how to really get someone who can't draw and learn to draw in a short space of time, exceptionally. I don't know, maybe there is, but I haven't found it.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, last one then. How can people contact and connect with you?
I have my website, Facebook page. They're the two easiest ways, or Instagram. So Instagram and Facebook is Rob Ballentine Art. Just hit those up and you can get in contact with me that way. Or my website is just robballentine.com.
Brilliant, perfect. Thank you very much, Rob.
You're welcome. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to doing this. This has been wonderful, to share this story. And thank you.
Creativity Found is an Open Stage Arts production. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please feel free to subscribe, rate and review. If you would like to help fund future episodes, you can buy us a coffee. That's ko-fi, the online platform that helps creators receive financial support from fans of their work. Visit ko-fi.com/creativityfoundpodcast. If you have found your creativity as an adult and would like to talk to me for future podcasts, drop me a line at Claire, CLAIRE, at openstagearts.co.uk. On Instagram or Facebook, follow at Creativity Found Podcast, where you'll find photos of our contributors' artworks and be kept abreast of what we're up to.